Hey guys, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani here. Today we're going to be talking about the truth about pH balance, acid, alkaline. We're going to kind of dive into that and break it down for you guys to help it make sense. But before we do, please smash the like button. It really helps the search algorithm. I'd love to see your comments down below. So first off, what is pH? Let me bring out my little outline here so we got it. pH is the potential hydrogen. And we have these different graphs here. Typically, your 1 through 6 is going to be more on the acidic side. 7 is going to be neutral. That's like water, right? Your blood's slightly alkaline, about 7.3, 7.35. So neutral's in that 7 range. 8 and 14 up are going to be alkaline. And so essentially every number you go from 1 to 2 or 2 to 3, it's logarithmic, it's exponential. So times 10 every single time you go up. It's logarithmic. So this is important to know. And different foods are going to leave a different pH or acidic or alkaline ash. Again, your body's going to deal with some of these things differently. Plus things like inflammation play a role because part of the inflammatory response gets ramped up with a higher pH or a lower pH. More acidic stimulates cytokines, interleukins. So part of an immune response actually involves dropping the pH. And if you look at foods or animals, for instance, when they die, when they're killed and slaughtered, the longer that animal sits there, the actually more alkaline that animal becomes because acidity actually makes it harder for microbes to grow. This is an important thing. So first off, when we talk about different parts of the body, well, we can't just talk about pH like in a nutshell, because different parts of the body have different pHs. So we have the stomach is going to be much more acidic, probably around 2 or so, 2.5 because of hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid is really important for activating our proteolytic enzymes, pepsinogen to pepsin, activating those enzymes that are really important for digestion. We have our small intestine. So when food goes from the stomach to the small intestine, we make a bunch of bicarbonate to bring that back up to neutral to even slightly alkaline. So that pH shifts there. And then, of course, as that food from the small intestine gets absorbed, different nutrients, different fermentation happens in the gut, and that food goes from the small intestine to the colon/large intestine. There may be a slight bit of acidity, more beneficial bacteria there, more electrolyte absorption, so slightly bit more acidic. You look at your urine's going to be slightly bit acidic. Saliva is going to be anywhere between 6.7 to 7.4 according to the research, so it could be slightly acidic to slightly alkaline. So different parts of the body, will change based on that. And we know that a nice lower pH is actually really important for knocking down microbes. If you see a high pH in the gut, you can almost guarantee H. pylori and or bacterial overgrowth. You see a high pH in the urinary canal. You see this with women on birth control. You're going to have a candida or fungal overgrowth. So pH does have its benefits with digestion, with knocking down microbes. Now, why does pH even matter in the food? So let's take a look at some of the foods to kind of break it down and make sense of it. Okay, so let me just make this a little bit bigger for you guys. Okay, so you see a couple foods here out of the gate. So you're going to see a lot of your processed foods and your sweet foods out of the gate are going to have a very low pH. Not good, right? Part of the reason why, sugar destroys your teeth, for instance, is because it feeds a lot of the staph mutans bacteria in your mouth, and that causes an acid byproduct. That acid then will wear away at the enamel. So sometimes it's fuel for microbes, and those microbes kind of poop out acids. And sometimes it's direct, like the food actually has that pH. And so you have to look at everything in totality because in your body, nothing exists in isolation, right? And so alcohol, sweets, drinks, and again, beef's typically right in around the mid five-ish range. So that shows to be a steak, but it should be up a little bit higher, mid fives. You can see pastas, coffee, and again, coffee will change if you're putting some MCT oil in your coffee or something like that. That may shift the pH. Breads, grains, they're still going to be acidic. So people talk about meats are so bad because they're more acidic. Well, meats are typically going to be on the same scale as dairy and other types of grains as well. And then you can see as you go more alkaline or slightly more to the neutral range, you can see fish, omega-3s, eggs, avocados. And again, remember, fatty acids. So fats tend to be a little bit more acidic because they're fatty acids. Proteins tend to be a little bit more acidic because they're amino acids. These are important, right? These are building blocks. Every single cell of your body has a lipid bilayer. All your muscles are protein, are amino acids, right? Your brain, 60 to 70% cholesterol. So it's important, right? All of your hormones tend to have a cholesterol or fatty acid backbone to it, right? Whether they're peptide-based or which is protein, or steroid-based, which they're more going to be cholesterol. So I don't want people to think, oh, well, fatty acids are bad or protein's bad because of the pH. It's more complex than that, right? You have to look at everything holistically. Plus, we have a lot of nutrients in our body like vitamin C, ascorbic acid, or folate, or folic acid, or GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid, or PABA, para-aminobutyric acid. You go on and on and on, right? And so pH, you have to look at it in balance. Plus, when we eat foods, we tend to also eat other types of foods with it, maybe proteins and fats and carbohydrates too. So when you look at things that are more neutral, your water, I think olive oil is going to be a little bit more on the neutral side. That's an oleic fatty acid, omega-9. And then you can see your fruits. Your fruits and your vegetables tend to be more on the alkaline side. So most people that talk about pH in their diet, they're kind of just pushing and saying, hey, you need to eat all these vegetables, kind of a vegan vegetarian agenda. But the fact of the matter is that when you look at structural tissue of the body, bones, they're half protein, muscles, protein, amino acids, brain, cholesterol, fatty acids, every cell in the body, you need to eat the building blocks that your body is made of so you can reconstitute that, right? Because your body's always turning over cells. And so the meats are also going to have different nutrients in them and different spectrums of nutrients if they're eating grass versus grain. So look at foods, look at it holistically. Your animal products are going to be a slightly bit acidic. Your grains and sugar, definitely acidic. Your vegetables, your fruits, more alkaline. And then you have some fatty acids in the middle with olive oil, but most of your fats are going to be slightly bit acidic as well. So moral of the story, don't worry about eating for pH. Just worry about eating a little bit on both sides. Good fats, good proteins, and then worry about the good healthy vegetables on the other side. Now, why are these even alkaline? Why? Typically, when we talk about alkalinity, foods are alkaline because of the minerals in them. So a lot of times, potassium, magnesium, these are going to be your key minerals that are going to make things typically more alkaline. There are different waters that are out there that you guys see that are essentially like advertised to be super high pH water. You got to be careful with waters like these because these waters are that high because of hydrolysis. They basically take the H2O molecule, they crack the hydrogen out, and they are able to manipulate the pH through hydrolysis of splitting the hydrogen ions with electricity. And so you got to be careful with that because foods typically tend to be more alkaline because of the nutrients in them. If the food is now more alkaline or the water is more alkaline because of hydrolysis, well, then you're defeating the fact that that food should have nutrients in there to make it that way. That's why if you want to add a little bit of alkalinity in your water, just add like a little bit of sea salt or electrolytes, a little bit of magnesium, potassium. That'll shift your water and make it just a little bit more on the alkaline side. And so when you look at your pH too, let me just show you one more thing. You guys can see it. Ooh, did I just X that out? I think I just X'd that out. That's okay. I'll pull up a little pH level here so you guys can see it. pH scale with food. You guys can see here, right? Milk's going to be 6, water's right in the middle, egg. That's surprising, an egg is at 8. And then you can see, you have some caustic compounds that can be alkaline too. You have bleach. You have different alkalis that are used for cleaning, right? Ammonia is also pretty high on the pH side of the fence. And so pH isn't all good, right? And so when we look at pH, it's super important to see one thing here too. When we look at pH, we really want to understand the inflammation component. This is a really cool article right here. So during inflammation, the drop in pH is a result of infiltration and activation of inflammatory cells in the tissue, which leads to an increase in energy and oxygen demand and accelerated glucose consumption via glycolysis, thus increasing lactic acid secretion. So what this means is the more inflamed you become, part of the inflammation response will be a drop in pH. It will be to stimulate lactic acid. So the problem is you look at foods, you got to look at the inflammatory nature of these foods. Because if certain foods may be more inflammatory, like grains or processed vegetables, processed carbohydrates, processed sugars, right? Anything that has added sugar to it or is maybe excessively high carb, especially if you're insulin resistant, these foods are going to leave an inflammatory residue, and that's going to shift the pH in itself, right? You can't just look at the food and say, well, what's the pH of this? What's the inflammatory nature of that food? Because the inflammatory nature is going to play a big role. So if you're eating grass-fed meat, it's anti-inflammatory, right? Good, healthy fatty acids, right? Stearic acid, it's going to have GLA, gamma-linolenic acid, especially if it's grass-fed. Eggs, good, healthy fatty acids, vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K. Healthy fish, omega-3 fatty acids. Any of your olive oils or your omega-9s or your monounsaturated like cod liver oil or like cod liver oil can actually be good too. Avocado oil and your cold-pressed olive oil too. All good fatty acids, right? So really important. You want to eat for inflammation. So people talk about pH. I'm like, eat for inflammation, eat for nutrient density. If you do that, I think pH kind of as a byproduct kind of takes care of itself, because if you're eating some vegetables with your meals, that's going to kind of neutralize things out anyway on the acid alkaline side. But we're not doing that. We're really just eating for inflammation reduction. Again, people on the carnivore camp would say, hey, screw that. I'm going to eat a whole bunch of grass-fed meat. Now, again, you can get away with that if you really need it, if like the microbiome or you're super inflamed and the inflammation of those plant-based products, the oxalates, the phytates, the phenols are driving inflammation. Well, I'd say, yeah, you should, because we shouldn't be eating for pH first. Eat for inflammation reduction and nutrient density, number one, number two. And again, if they're grass-fed or pasture-fed animal products, whether it's eggs or fish or chicken, right, the quality of nutrient density will be high and the inflammation reduction will be super, super high as well. You're going to keep that inflammation down. So just transcend beyond pH. Think about nutrient density and anti-inflammatory first. I think that's key here out of the gates. Let me see what else I got for you guys. So pH, why do they have the certain food they do? Amino acids, fatty acids, right? Nutrients. pH isn't all bad. We need certain parts of the body to have good pH for digestion, for repelling microbes so we don't get infections in our urinary tract or our vaginal canal or our oral cavity, right? Animal products bad because they're more acidic? No, they're not bad. They can be very nutrient dense and very anti-inflammatory. And if you can combine your animal products with some vegetables, even better. Now, microbiome, guess what? Acidophilus literally translates in Greek or Latin to acid loving. So good, healthy, beneficial bacteria, probiotics in the microbiome will actually spit off lactic acid and different acids that will shift the pH. That's part of the reason why the colon or large intestine is a little bit more acidic, is that good, healthy bacterial levels, which are important because they help synthesize nutrients, vitamin K, folate, B12. They help make these acids to make it harder for microbes to grow. Part of the reason why these beneficial microbes with prebiotic fibers like butyrate, butyric acid, right? These fermentable fibers will cause more butyrate production, same kind of fat as butter, and that makes it harder for microbes to grow when you have some of these fermented acids coming off in the colon. So it makes it really hard and keeps a lot of the bad microbes in check. So think a little bit deeper. When we talk about pH, think about probiotics, think about the microbiome. It's important that we have these good things. Part of the byproducts will be acid base. We need a good pH that's lower in certain parts of the body to fight off microbes. Anecdotal story. A doctor that worked in a cancer facility saw his sickest patients on the cancer side. They had very, very, very alkaline pHs. Why? His theory was that they were not able to dump out the acid of inflammation in their body. And so if you have a super high pH, let's say urine, for instance, you may not be able to dump the acids. We know part of the inflammatory byproduct is inflammation. The pH is needed so we can have that inflammatory reaction happen better. And so high pH may not be the best thing, unless you're overly doing it because you're doing lots of potassium loading and lots of magnesium loading. We need to get that pH, that low pH, that acid out, and part of that is healthy kidneys and healthy urination. Again, have a blend of both foods on the acidic side, on the alkaline side, but think about it more from an inflammation, nutrient density standpoint, different parts of the body. I think we hit it all, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, put your comments down below. Love to hear it. And also, if you want to dive in deeper, you have some issues on the health side that you want to get to the root cause underneath. Again, functional medicine is what I do. Once we get to the root cause of why you have your health issues, really trying to understand hormones, gut, nutrient density, setting a solid foundation so your body can heal, because it's set to heal itself. We just have to remove the barriers. If you want to dive in, I see patients worldwide. There'll be a link down below if you want to reach out and schedule. All right, guys, have an awesome day. Take care. Bye.